So some more characteristics with this dialect of Spanish. For this one, the first one we have listed is the lenition of the d phoneme, or the d. It's spelled as a d in Spanish. Remember, de. So this d, it has a sort of lenition, but there's a caveat here, because anytime that d is not softened, which that's what lenition is, a softening of consonants. Anytime this d is not softened, it's gonna remain a really hard d sound. For example, the word calidad, right? Calidad, that d, both of the d's there are both pronounced calidad. They are both hard pronounced as a d, right? Or even the word Florida, like Florida, right? There are exceptions with this lenition, though. When it comes to the ado endings, there's a tendency for this d to just disappear, and it's gonna get pronounced as nothing, like nothing there. So Colorado gets pronounced as Colorao, which actually Colorado means reddish colored, or a red colored, or a red tinge, right? Colorao. But yeah, lenition doesn't really exist in many parts of the Philippine Spanish with the D. It usually exists between like two vowels right here, and the b and the g, same thing. When there's two vowels between b and g, it stays as b and g. When there's two vowels between d, it stays as duh. The lenition thing happens like once in a blue moon, and or it gets what's it called? It becomes like a fricative, like air just comes to become air comes and softens the sound. That's what it pretty much does. Like lenition does that. So from a d to a th, it doesn't really exist. So all of these are pronounced with a hard d. Colorado, Florida, Calidad. There are times though, that's why I'm gonna just repeat, there are times though where this d gets deleted altogether. It just doesn't exist. Colorado, right? So you'll see that from time to time when that d doesn't even exist. But this lenition, non-existent. All right, not real. Well, I shouldn't say non-existence, but it doesn't really exist. Okay, so moving on here with the final n, right? This na, n, the n, right? The letter n. The final n. When you have a final n on a word, sometimes it gets velarized into a ng sound. This n has a tendency to go from an n to an ng. Okay, n to an ng. So from an n to an ng kind of sound, a velar nasal sound. And that velar nasal sound has a change in pronunciation with the Philippine Spanish dialect. So for example, sometimes people will say, "Oh, vaya con Dios," right? Which means like, "Oh, you go with God." Vaya con Dios. But a Filipino Spanish speaker has a tendency to say vaya con Dios, vaya con Dios. Instead of saying vaya con Dios, vaya con Dios, you hear that it's a slight velarized sound with that n. They're gonna add a ng to the end of it. Vaya con Dios. Or here's another one, codon, right? Codon has a tendency to be said as codong, right? Codong. It gets kind of nasally, kind of velar and nasally. Codon to codong. And finally, here's a popular one that a lot of people read books out of, right? So Don Quixote. Don Quixote, you'll hear it as Don Quixote. Don Quixote. So you'll hear that it has a slight ng sound, and this is usually influenced from Philippine languages, because local and indigenous Philippine languages, they love to do this ng at the end of words instead of a n. They love to put the velar nasal ng sound at the end of words that have an n sound. And that's just characteristic of like language contact from Philippine Spanish with Philippine local languages, or the indigenous Philippine local languages. And finally, for this video, we have the lambda, the li sound, like the li sound, right? L. It's not the l, but it's a li sound. It's a double L sound. Whenever two L's are spelled side by side in a Spanish word in the Philippine Spanish dialect, they get pronounced as a li. Cabello, 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 or bella, bella, right? So cabello, bella. Um, Cabello and Bella. Now, this is unique to Philippine Spanish, right? Because I think in some Castilian dialects, this actually exists, but it's becoming rare. And in other Spanish dialects, this is usually pronounced as a ya, a sha, or a ja, or a cha. It just depends. So it depends on the dialect. Like cabello will in Argentina would be pronounced as cabello, in Chile, cabello, maybe in Colombia as capecho, but in the Philippines, cabello, or in Mexico, cabello, right? So this gets pronounced as a li, cabello, and bella. Those are just examples, and this is something I wanted to show. More to come.